Have you ever had that strange feeling like something is off? Not something big, not something loud, but just a soft emptiness sitting quietly in the back of your chest? Like you're scrolling through your phone or hanging out with friends or maybe even achieving your biggest goals. And yet, something feels like it's missing. It's that quiet question we don't really say out loud. Is this it? You see, most of us walk around carrying a strange kind of grief. Not for someone we've lost, not for a breakup, not for a tragedy, but a grief that we can't really name. A grief for something that feels like it should have been, but never was. Psychologists don't talk about it much, and we don't have a proper word for it. But today we're calling it the soul's hidden grief. This is the feeling that something's not quite whole. It's the invisible ache beneath a life that, from the outside, looks completely fine. And no, you're not broken. This is part of being human. Maybe it starts in childhood. Maybe it's that moment you realize the world didn't feel as magical as it used to, when you stopped pretending the clouds were castles and started learning that not every story has a happy ending. When you found out your parents weren't superheroes and sometimes people leave, they move on, they change, or maybe they never really saw you in the way you needed to be seen. That's where the quiet begins. Because from a young age, we're taught to fill that emptiness, distract yourself, do well in school, get good grades, go to college, land a job, fall in love, buy things, smile for photos, post it, hashtag it, filter it. But underneath all of it, that little voice is still there, still asking, why does it feel like something's missing? We live in a world designed to keep us from asking that question. Everything around us is built to keep us moving, scrolling, consuming. Don't sit still. Don't go too deep. Don't listen to the silence. Because in the silence, we might hear that ache again. And this ache is not depression. It's not anxiety. It's not a mental illness. It's more subtle than that. It's existential. It's spiritual. It's philosophical. It's like your soul remembers something you forgot, and it's been trying to get your attention ever since. Think about this. Have you ever had a moment where you achieved something big, and instead of feeling pure joy, you felt nothing? Or maybe even a strange kind of sadness. You got the job, the house, the relationship, and you felt proud, sure, maybe even happy for a minute, but not complete. That's the soul's hidden grief. It's the emotional residue left behind by a world that promises fulfillment in things that were never meant to truly fulfill us. Now let's be clear. There's nothing wrong with wanting success, love, recognition, comfort. These are all human needs. But the lie we've been sold is that these things are enough on their own. That if we check the boxes, the ache will disappear. But here's the twist. The ache isn't a flaw. It's a compass. Let me say that again. The ache, the feeling that something's missing, isn't a problem to solve. It's a message, a signal, a gentle tug from the deeper part of you that remembers what you're really here for. We spend our lives chasing versions of ourselves that don't exist. The perfect self, the productive self, the always confident, always happy self. But those are just roles, masks, filters we wear, and the more we try to live as those versions, the more disconnected we feel from the version that's real. And real feels raw, it feels messy, it feels vulnerable, but it also feels true. One day, you might wake up and realize you've built a life that looks perfect, but feels hollow. And that's when the grief becomes louder, not dramatic, not loud like a scream, but deep, like a sigh from the center of your being. This grief doesn't want to destroy your life. It wants to help you find your life. Because here's the thing. The feeling that something is missing is often a sign that something real is waiting, not outside of you, but within. under the expectations, under the pressure, under the noise, and the only way to hear it is to get quiet. Not forever, not all at once, just enough to notice it, to sit with it, to let it speak. Now I know what you're thinking. Cool story, but I've got bills, work, responsibilities. I can't just sit in a cave and find my soul. Fair. But that's not what this is about. This isn't about escaping your life. It's about returning to it, more awake. Because the truth is, most of us are sleepwalking. Not because we're lazy, not because we're weak, but because the world rewards numbness, hustle, distraction, endless doing. But your soul isn't impressed by your resume. Your soul cares about depth, meaning, connection, beauty, truth. It longs for conversations that feel alive, work that feels like service, not survival, relationships where you're not performing, moments where you're not trying to be liked, but simply being real. And the grief shows up when we're too far from that. It's like a homesickness for a life we haven't fully lived yet. It's the feeling you get when you see a sunset and realize you haven't paused in weeks. It's when someone looks you in the eye and really listens, and you tear up, not because you're sad, but because it's been so long since someone saw you. The soul's hidden grief isn't here to break you. It's here to bring you back. Back to what matters. Back to what's real, back to you. So if you've felt this emptiness, this subtle missing piece, you're not crazy. You're not broken. You're waking up. And waking up is messy. It's uncomfortable. It asks you to stop running. It asks you to feel things you'd rather avoid. It asks you to slow down when everything tells you to speed up. But it also gives you something priceless. It gives you back your life. It's the quiet realization that the thing you thought would fix you didn't. The success, the validation, the applause, even the love. It made things better, but it didn't complete you. And let's be real, that's a terrifying realization. Because if this didn't do it, if the thing you worked so hard for still left that space inside you, then what will? What can? That's when we start running. We dive into self-help books, meditation apps, cold plunges, hot yoga, green smoothies, dopamine detoxes, and maybe even a 10-day silent retreat in the mountains of Nepal, where ironically, you spend most of your time secretly wondering if the Wi-Fi is good enough to post a story about how offline you are. But here's the thing. The soul's grief isn't fixed by optimizing yourself. You can't productivity hack your way out of an existential ache. Because the grief isn't asking for improvement. It's asking to be seen, to be felt, to be heard. And that's hard, because we're scared of looking soft, weak, vulnerable, especially in a world that celebrates hustle over healing. But what if this grief isn't weakness? What if it's wisdom? What if this ache you carry is not a flaw in your design, but a feature of your depth? You see, the soul's grief shows up in those tiny moments when you realize you're not fully living, when you're laughing with people you love and still feel alone, when you're surrounded by noise but feel unseen, when you keep asking yourself, why do I have everything and still feel like I'm not enough? That grief is ancient. It's deeper than just you. It's generational. It's cultural. It's spiritual. And in some ways, it's universal. Even the greatest minds and mystics, Rumi, Carl Jung, Viktor Frankl, they all pointed to this invisible longing inside the human spirit, that aching for meaning, for connection, for truth. And here's something wild. Sometimes the very thing we're grieving never actually existed. We grieve the fantasy, the perfect life, the unconditional love, the ideal version of ourselves. We grieve the person we thought we would become. We grieve the story we once believed we were living. And in that space, in that quiet heartbreak, is where the soul begins to awaken, You're not just feeling your own emptiness. You're feeling the echoes of your parents' unspoken dreams, your grandparents' sacrifices, and centuries of human longing that got passed down without ever being named. You are the living expression of a lineage that kept pushing forward without always stopping to ask, but what do I really need? And here's where it gets even weirder, in a beautiful, poetic way. Some philosophers and mystics believe that this feeling of something missing isn't a problem to fix, but the very proof that we are more than just flesh and bone, that the ache is evidence of the soul. Think about it. Why would you long for something you've never experienced, unless some part of you remembers it? Like homesickness for a place you've never been. That's not brokenness. That's depth. That's mystery. We spend so much time trying to fill the void. But what if the void is not meant to be filled, but explored? I had a friend, let's call him Jay, who once told me, every time I got something I thought I wanted, I felt a little more lost. He had the job, the money, the vacations. From the outside, he looked like he was winning. But one night, after a party, he just sat in his car for an hour in silence, staring out the windshield. And he said this line I'll never forget. I feel like I built a life that impresses everyone but doesn't mean anything to me. That's the soul's hidden grief. It's the ache of authenticity left unlived, the quiet mourning of a self you buried to survive, the grief of knowing you're more than this, but not knowing how to get there. And it's not just individuals. Entire cultures suffer from this grief. We live in systems that reward performance over presence, applause over alignment, noise over nuance. No wonder we feel like something's missing. We're chasing goals that aren't even ours. Let me say that again, because it might hit different the second time. We're chasing goals that aren't even ours. Maybe the job you're breaking yourself for was your father's dream, not yours. Maybe the picture-perfect relationship you're trying to build is based on movies, not reality. Maybe your idea of success came from a stranger on Instagram, and maybe your soul is grieving not because you failed, but because you succeeded at becoming someone you're not. That's where it gets tricky. Because now we're not just dealing with emptiness. We're dealing with shame. Shame that we feel empty at all. You think, I should be grateful. You look around and say, people have it worse. And then you bury it again. But let me tell you this. Your grief is valid. Your longing is not a flaw. Your emptiness is not ingratitude. In fact, the very fact that you feel this way proves something powerful. It proves that your soul is still alive, that you haven't numbed yourself completely, that despite all the conditioning, you still have access to something real inside you, something wild, something ancient, something true. But we rarely talk about this. Because it's awkward. It doesn't fit into a tweet. You can't make a viral TikTok about the slow ache in your chest when you realize you've been pretending for most of your life. So we keep it quiet. We call it burnout, or boredom, or midlife crisis. But really it's grief. Grief for the version of you that never got to live. And here's the twist. That grief isn't just sadness. It's a compass. It's your soul pointing you back toward what matters. It's your inner self saying, this isn't it. But keep going. Because if there's grief, there's love. If something's missing, it means something mattered enough to be missed. It means there's still a part of you that remembers who you really are. That part of you isn't broken. It's buried. And the grief is the shovel. Now, I'm not here to give you a 5-step plan to fill the void. Anyone who tells you they can fix this in a weekend seminar is either lying or selling something. What I am here to do is remind you that the ache you feel is shared. It's sacred, and you don't have to run from it. Sit with it. Listen to it. Ask it questions. What are you trying to tell me? What part of me have I ignored? What dreams did I abandon to feel accepted? What version of me died quietly while I was performing someone else's life? These are not easy questions, but they are honest ones. You might cry, you might laugh, you might get angry. That's okay. That's all part of the process. Because this isn't about finding answers. It's about remembering your own voice beneath the noise. And when you do that, when you truly sit with your grief, not as a problem, but as a companion, you'll notice something strange start to happen. You'll begin to feel lighter, not because the emptiness is gone, but because you're no longer running from it. You've stopped pretending it's not there. And that, in itself, is healing, because the moment you stop trying to escape yourself is the moment you finally come home to yourself. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you let yourself feel that hidden grief, the more space you create for real joy. Not surface-level happiness, not dopamine spikes, but quiet, grounded, soul-fed joy. The kind that doesn't need applause, the kind that feels like coming home after a long, long journey. And that's what this video is, a homecoming. It's not a solution. It's not an answer. It's a reminder that your grief is sacred, that your ache is valid, and that your longing is the most honest thing about you. You don't have to fix it. You just have to feel it. So if you're still watching, I want to leave you with something simple. Not advice, not a quote, just a question. What part of you have you been grieving in secret? Sit with that. Write it down. Whisper it to yourself. Talk to someone, or just let it exist quietly in your heart. You don't need to rush to fix what's missing. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply admit that it is. And maybe, just maybe, that's where healing begins.